Well, it took some doing, and I'm glad I had Jason here to help me. I've got this re-shim back into place. I took the existing shims out and I wedged this over and screwed that back in, checked that, and this door is plumb now. If I hold my level on the side of it, and the bubble is right in the middle. If anything, I cheated it uphill just a little bit because I know it's going to slide down eventually. And so my next step, and you know, this is unorthodox because I have to cut the door jamb. My next step is to cut the door jamb off, and I've got to cut it off about 1/2 inch. This side style down here. I've already got one cut in it. See that cut? I cut it all the way across. Now I have to cut 1/2 inch out of that because it's still way up too high when I close the door. Here, let me show you. You remember before I had 1 inch up there. Well, right there. Now I've got about a little over 5/8 of an inch. Right there. Okay, and so I want 3/16 gap there because the right hand side has about a 3/16 gap. Right over there at the top. Okay, now normally what you do is rehang the door and all that, and we can't go down any lower because this threshold is right down on the ground. So I'm just going to whack out 1/2 inch off the jamb, and then I'm going to pry this jamb down and, you know, with a crowbar and push it on down and lessen that gap. Then reattach it down here and on the sides. Okay, that's my next step. My trusty little back saw that cost me $8 with the plastic miter box. I'm using that, and I'm going to run it sideways, cut off 1/2 inch off that door jamb, and I'm going to push her down. And all the people said, "Amen, brother." Look at this. We've got a nice reveal here now. And what I did is I took up here and I pried that down. Remember, I cut it 1/2 inch. Now this is exactly where it's supposed to be. Now the strike plate lines up. The deadbolt goes in. I had to reattach it down here. The reason why I did not want to take this off of here. First off, that would have been really difficult. Secondly, there's an alarm little pad right here where they drilled a hole, and that goes in, and I think it's still hooked up to the alarm, or it's an old one. So I cut it right there, wedged this down, and then reattached this. And I've got just enough here to spooge some caulking in there. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I caulk that before I get done, and then I close the door. And I had to check the reveal. Now the reveal was not exactly what it is now. It was a little bit wider, and I needed some shims. And I didn't have any door shims here, but I had a paint stick. Where is that paint stick, Jason? Here's my paint stick. I use this as a shim. It fit right on in where I needed it, and I cut it off with the sheetrock, with my sheetrock knife. And then I had a little piece of wood that I cut off the pine door jamb, and I wedged that in there, and I used that as my shim. I just pried it with a big, huge screwdriver. Got a big old screwdriver here, pried that exactly where I wanted, put the shim in, took this out, attached the shim, and now I'll go ahead and put a couple more screws in here. And you can use finish nails too, but I've got some sheetrock screws, and I'll just countersink the heads, and then I'll put some caulking over the top of the heads anyways, and I'll have to attach my trim right here that I took off, and we took that off very carefully, so I'll have to put that back on. So there's a few more things I have to do, and I even up here, you remember that huge gap we had? You see there? It's all lined up now, and I tap this back down, and I put a little wedge in between that and the sheetrock there to keep that down. And then once I attach the trim here, I'll attach the trim on the stop here and the sheetrock up above into the header. Okay, now line all that kind of stuff up. So I'm almost done with this, and way better than spending $2,000 on another door. Chances are the same thing's going to happen in a few years. This may settle more, and it might have to be adjusted some more. So once I plumbed this up, I even plumbed it up and made it level, a little bit higher than level, so that next time when this sags a little bit, I'll still have enough reveal over here before it hits the door jamb. And the door has settled too, and there's some joints in here that's kinked that. So I mean, I'm just reusing everything here. I haven't spent any money yet, and I'll probably, you know, the only thing I'm going to need is I'm going to reuse the nails here and for the trim and stuff, and the only thing I'm going to need is the caulking. One caulk tube for $2.50 or whatever, instead of $2,000 for a new door. And this door, how long has it been like this, Jason?
About 5 years.
About 5 years. And it's gotten worse along the way, because I could tell that somebody had worked on these hinges from before. And I'm not done yet here. I still have to resync the screws in here, and I've got to use some longer screws because some of those short screws were stripped out of the hinge. So I still have a little bit of work here before I call this done. But first and foremost, the main thing in this whole project was to get this door pushed back up into place, adjust it, get the header, door stop, door jamb, head, move down, readjust this, pull this down, and do all that. So basically, the main stuff on this is done, and now it's just about talking about resetting screws, putting some extra screws in here, and reattaching the trim. So I'm going to start working on that, and I'll be back to show you what I've done with that.